Hey guys, you're listening to the Closeup podcast. You're joined by Anirudh,
Eduardo,
Luisa,
and Alex.
For our first episode, we're going to be talking about The Others and Scream, both great horror films, as we're doing our first episode as a Halloween theme.
Even though technically Halloween has passed, but let's let that slide for a bit. I mean, Simpsons could do it, why can't we? So, you know.
We chose two completely different films to just discuss about the possibilities that we can have in horror films. So yeah, Scream.
Scream.
Scream is that?
I thought it was pretty good. Scream is a film from 1996. It was directed by Wes Craven, and it's a very kind of standard, well, not standard, but it follows the formula of a slasher movie. There is a killer, he's seen a few too many scary movies, and now he's hunting down his possible friends.
Yeah, but the thing is that it like has a twist, obviously, because that's a bit boring just with that. It does in a more like self-aware way, I guess.
That is, what set it apart from all the other horror films at the time.
Well, sort of. I think the big thing about Scream was that at the time it was part of the slasher movies, you know, the idea that we're just going to have this killer in a mask and he's going to stalk a group of stupid teenagers and just murder them off one by one, but it was sort of going through a bit of a burnout period. Like, if you think mostly because it was just getting so kind of silly in a way, you know. We started off with Friday the 13th with this kind of more suspenseful thriller, and now Jason Voorhees has gone off into space or into hell or something, and I don't know, things like Nightmare on Elm Street, you know, you see the original Nightmare, Freddy is this legitimately pretty creepy guy, and by the sixth movie, he's just this horror comedian, you know, he's killing people with Nintendo accessories or whatever.
Yeah, in some ways, like, Scream is more honest, I guess, because it just goes straight to that, just goes straight being, okay, you're going to be funny, you once you start watching it, you know they're going to make fun of it.
Like there's a lot of humor involved in it because it's so self-referential that it becomes, well, I found it hilarious. I don't know you guys, I actually liked it and enjoyed it a lot.
I know. I first saw the film when I think I'd probably be 11 or 12 years old, which probably wasn't the right age for this kind of film, but when I saw it after being a big fan of, like I mentioned, Friday, Halloween, Nightmare, it was honestly kind of a bit refreshing to see how self-aware and self-referential it was. You know, you have the main girl, Nancy, and she's just saying, well, you know, they're all the same, some big-breasted girl being chased up the stairs by a serial killer in a mask. And it's just like, yeah, you got a point there.
Yeah, and like, right after that, she runs up the stairs, and she's being, like, run up by the serial killer. So, I don't know. I think it's very experimental. Like, in a way, they experimented with this humor, and they tried to make it different. And for the time, it was different. But then, nowadays, we see this so often. Like, breaking the fourth wall is something we see every day. Like, in film. So, now it has become a kind of cliche. So, it's not new anymore.
Yeah, definitely. That's a bit of a problem.
No, it's funny for me because differently from you, I have hardly watched any horror films.
Oh, right.
So for me, it was honestly like one of the first horror films I watched, but it's not really horror. It's an interesting experience also, this way.
Yeah, like.
Sorry.
I saw it when I was like 14 years old for the first time. I loved the movie, and I was going to watch it again, and some of the writing just doesn't. Just read a quote?
Going back, and it is very 90s.
Like the actual writer, I got a quote here from Williamson on his writing. Direct quote. It says, "I look at it and go, ooh, ouch, that dialogue." In some of the places, it's hard. It is a very 90s. It's the most 90s film I've ever seen.
Yeah, no, like when you were watching, we talked about it. It almost seemed like a parody of itself.
Yeah.
Like the lighting, the writing, everything just seems very amateur, I guess.
Yeah, and also the music. Sometimes it just feels like too much. I found the music like too much and over-exaggerated.
Yeah, definitely. But, and I guess part of the thing, I'll just defend it a little bit. But, I think part of the thing is that, like, going back to all horror movies, I think it wasn't so much to make these characters kind of deep. They're never going to be gone. They're never going to be deep. But it was more to make them at least sort of likable. Like, if you go back to all those old horror movies, they usually fill them up with enormous casts to just keep the body pile going. Most of these characters are unlikable. They're usually, teenagers, sex, drugs, whatever. And they basically just exist to get killed off. Scream took it a bit differently, where it does rely on those cliches a bit, but at the very least there's, say, around 5 main characters. You have the main girl, Sydney, her boyfriend, her best friend, his boyfriend, and, of course, Randy, the nerd character who kind of became the fan favorite of the group because he's the one with all the self-referential stuff.
Yeah.
And Dewey.
And Dewey,
of
of
course,
course.
Dewey.
Come on.
Dewey.
And Dale as
Dewey
well,
is-
but mostly Dewey.
Yeah.
hilarious.
Oh, and there's also the journalist girl.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's a
let's not
smaller
forget
cast,
her.
which lets them kind of get fleshed out a tiny bit more,
Yeah.
and they're not all portrayed as completely unlikable. With
Dewey
arguably,
is the
they're-
most likable guy I've ever seen.
arguably they're a bit more realistic in terms of being this small American town kind of community, I suppose.
Yeah, I found very interesting the journalist, the character. Like, she's very keen on getting the story and all of it, and then I really like that she gets into the whole situation by really wanting to get the story, and in the end, she's the one that's telling everyone what happened.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I found her really interesting. It's kind of a twist. She's different to the rest of them because all of them are teenagers, and she's the only adult that is actually portrayed there.
Yeah.
So because we have the parents and everything, but they are not important characters in
and
the
even
story.
Dewey, who's supposedly an adult, he feels very teenagerish.
Yeah, exactly.
To be fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree. All the other characters, they all Sydney's boyfriend and his best friend, they are all they feel very cheesy in a lot of ways.
Every time he sticks his
Yeah,
tongue out of his mouth.
that's what I think.
Yeah, guys, it feels he's on an alien tongue. It just droops out past his chin. My God.
It's like they plucked him straight out of American Pie and
Yeah, that's pretty much the same character he is playing, admittedly.
Yeah. So if we try contrasting that with the others, which
My
is a
God.
completely different movie, we are.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, we took the decision of comparing both movies because they're completely different.
Yeah.
But for example, the characters in the others, I found they are really defined and they're greatly developed characters, which completely contrast against the Scream movie.
Yeah, but
Just to catch everyone up, I suppose, The Others is a 2001 supernatural horror movie made by, and I'm probably going to butcher this, Alejandro Amenabar.
I'll say it because I'll get it right.
Good idea.
Alejandro Amenabar.
There we go.
Yeah.
Starring Nicole Kidman as a conservative mother of 2 children who live in this big mansion, but the interesting twist is that her children have this very light, sensitive skin, which means they can never go out in sunlight, like vampires like that. So the entire house, whenever they're in, has to have all the curtains closed. And she wakes up one day, her staff are gone, the house surrounded by fog, but she still and there are these free new servants at the door who she hires just because everyone else is gone. And she did request for help, but the postman hasn't been turning up, so she wonders where they came from. And at first everything's just normal, the kids are kind of brats, but that's fine. And then she noticed there are others, get it, in the house. And so it starts off as this kind of haunted house movie, and then it leads to a very interesting twist.
which is a shame we can't talk about it because it's spoilers.
Yeah.
But it's a brilliant twist.
Yeah. I think that the whole movie is surrounded by this fog. Like, in the literal sense, the house is surrounded by fog, but in the symbolic sense, the whole idea and the whole mystery is made in a way that you, as the one watching the movie, you really want to know what's going on, because at the beginning you don't really understand, but it's very striking. Like, I found really striking how the first scene is she's just screaming. She wakes up and she's screaming, and I found that like it grabbed my attention immediately and really wanted me to know what happened and what's going on there.
Yeah. Watching it a second time, you can tell because they've said it before that they wrote the twist first.
Yes, yeah.
And then they went back and wrote the movie. So you can really see the kind of clues watching it a second time around, and the screaming is one of them. But I can't talk about that.
Oh yeah, I didn't notice that actually. Now that you said it, it made sense to me. Oh wow. No, but like what I was gonna say is that in more like abstract terms, the atmosphere is very much like that. Like even because all the curtains are always closed, it always feels like you can't see past like it's claustrophobic, and you can't see anything past a certain point. You can like predict it for some reason.
And then the whole issue of lighting, that's amazing because
brilliant.
it plays a lot with the lighting, and the lighting is just beautiful, and it's great because it's extremely relevant to the plot. So it's like
it's
amazing.
just one big metaphor, like the role reversal of light and darkness in the film. Like if you think of darkness, usually it signifies like the unknown and the fear, but here it's used as a safety, and light is like terrorizing the house. Like the scene where they're just screaming in like a bright light, there's nothing, and usually it's nothing to fear. You look forward to the day, and here it's literally terrorizing them.
Anytime there's light, that's almost a signifier that stuff's gonna go down, I guess.
Exactly.
But at the same time, the thing I've noticed about the film, it's so hard to talk about without revealing the twist, but light is still seen as kind of, from my opinion, light is kind of represents the harsh reality of the situation in the film. Like, yes, all the scary things happen in the lights, but at the same time, any time something's revealed, anytime they get a bit closer to the truth of the mystery, it's always in the light, until that comes down to the climax where, lights are just being flung open everywhere. That's as far
after the plot twist, it is just all bright shots, and they're not in the dark anymore, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, true.
And I think they build up the suspense for a long time. Like it's like the perfect timing between you not knowing what's going on and when everything is revealed. It's just like perfectly made. And also I think it's very interesting to think of the children, because like the whole movie has like this childhood story thing. Like it's very focused on both of the characters, the kid, the boy and the girl, and I feel like their perspective of it must be so different to the perspective of the mother. So it contrasts, and the way the characters are developed, it's very interesting.
I mean, in terms of acting, I mean, Nicole Kidman is great at looking like she's about to, being stressed out, I suppose. And
her
heart
eyes.
attack. Yeah.
She honestly looks like she's about to snap at any moment, and that feels like exactly what they are going for. So I give her props to that. And
the kids are also surprisingly good actors.
Very good child actors. I don't think
Yeah.
they really went on to anything, which is kind of a shame.
Yeah, and the tension that is built between the girl and the mother, it's just amazing. It's like it talks more about the personal relationship of them, and it also lets us get to know the characters better. So I found that really
It
amazing.
also leads to the twist.
Also
Yes,
it's that one scene which is very famous.
God, I don't want to keep mentioning it.
Yeah, but
Honest.
but there's like one scene which was even parodied in Scary Movie, right?
Was it? Which
Scary
one?
Movie 3, I think, or something like that. I read about it.
Are you
I
talking
watched
about
it.
the?
Sorry, but we can't give it away. But it's like there's this one brilliant scene which shows that the growing tension between the mother and her kid very well.
And I'm not spoiling it, but the look she gives is one of genuine terror. Like you could see it in her eyes. It gets me every single time I watch it.
Actually, before we're talking about scary bits, the one that freaks me out, and this isn't much spoiler, but okay, they established early in the film that there seems to be 4 others in the house, 4 ghosts.
One
mother,
Yeah.
the father, the kid, Victor, and an old woman. And the old woman is the freakiest thing. Like, first of all, I like to build her up. Like, you see her just as, like, the daughter drawing her, and, you know, that leaves it to your
Drawing, yeah.
imagination.
Drawing,
Like
yeah.
the picture's freaky, but it leaves to your imagination. What is this creature like in real life? Like
I love what they
then-
did with that. Yeah.
when you have obviously they encounter her at some point, and when they do, God, I've never been scared of an old woman in my life like that before. Just when you just see her kind of claw-like, wrinkly old hand playing with something, it's just like
Playing with a kid's toy and
it's unnerving.
The fact that she is in that scene, that she's inside the girl's body, like that totally plays with the idea of timeless ideas.
Yeah. When we see her, she's, the mother's left the daughter. She comes back, and in the same gown the daughter is in, we find this old woman, and it's just like.
So there's a lot of emphasis in the idea of youth and how it contrasts with like being old. I don't know, like the difference between ages, it's very evident, and it helps develop the characters.
Yeah, like they also mention like some traditions, like the traditions of the pictures.
yes, yeah.
Yeah. There's like this, they keep mentioning events that happen beforehand, and it all builds up to creating like a timeline, I guess. But in the end, like the timeline is a bit deconstructed, and it's very interesting the way they do that too.
What else?
Let's talk about the cinematography. I love it.
Go ahead.
The fact that they have a good excuse for why it's so dark, which led to so many great shots, and the shadows in this film, I just love it. And I'll read a quote from Alejandro.
Wait, where's the name? Alejandro Amenabar.
Just talking about the film and how it was shot. So it says, I think it's my purest film from the camera point of view. I just try to be specific and simple. We're talking about opening credits, and Dimension Films wanted to do some effects, and I said it has to be simple and specific. It's the best way to get the audience attention, because now you're subjected to these very, very short close-ups, and this very fast editing with all these explosions and all this moving around. To me, in the end, it's just boring, and I couldn't agree with him.
Yeah.
Like, more.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true, because it's like watching it today especially, because it's a movie from now almost 16 years old, right? So watching it today, you see that there's a lot of patience in setting the shots and doing everything, and that's not something that's very common at the present moment.
I suppose it's interesting because we've seen a sort of resurgence in this kind of haunted house genre, with things like Paranormal Activity,
Conjuring.
Insidious, The Conjuring. And, okay, they're not entirely ghosts, but, it's the idea of there's a paranormal force in
It's like
this
an intruder.
old,
Yeah.
rickety sort of house or whatever. And it's interesting because I think it's partly the reason that's where it's because it's become much easier to kind of use the special effects to move some chairs or kind of, I'm not saying they're all bad or anything, but I think part of the trend is
very
just that
different.
it's a bit, it's easier to make nowadays, and it's kind of considered a bit scared, and kind of if we just go back to Scream, kind of the old slasher films, which have, let's face it, are kind of seen as a bit cheesy nowadays.
Yeah,
I
like
mean, they
those
always
movies
were,
are
but,
completely tainted with action, and here it's more about the psychological state and the psychological like the psychological play with the audience, not only with the characters, but also like the audience gets involved in it. So it's much more complex, and obviously it requires a lot more effort in details and like very small things.
Yeah. I mean, like, in modern days, it feels like a lot of them, they kind of miss the point where they kind of just use a lot of fancy special effects and blood to kind of get the idea of the ghost out there. But it doesn't really do that. It's very, like you said, it's very patient. It takes its time, and I think it works better for that. In a way.
Couldn't we say then that Scream has aged poorly? It seems almost like a parody, and The Others has aged very well.
I guess we could.
In comparison.
I would agree with
guess-
you, but Go on.
Yeah.
You go first.
No. I'm just agreeing with that, but I know a lot of people still love the movie so
Yeah,
much.
I mean,
I think to a
I'm
degree
at
that's
that-
nostalgia
yeah.
though.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe.
But I don't know.
get that,
Just
but
go
at
on.
one point, I do kind of get it. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's like you look back at some of those old, okay, this is a weird example, but you look back at all those kind of like 50s sci-fi movies with their really cheap special effects, and you kind of go, well, that looks a bit, poor by today's standard, but you can understand the impact it probably had.
Yeah.
I mean, a big part of Scream is that, likable characters, the killer not being an immortal monster that can be shot and maimed and still come back,
He gets injured, like,
Yeah.
in the most comedic ways, like, every single time.
Actually, that's sort of the funny thing, like, it's like, oh, hey, we've got a killer who runs. Yeah, and he's tripping over everything.
Yeah.
But once again, it had this almost suburban kind of real feel to him, because there's also the fact that the costume he's wearing, that wasn't like, a lot of people think it was made by Scream. It wasn't. It was a popular costume at the time based on the Scream painting. Like,
By Edward Munch.
yeah, that one. Yeah. They just bought that from a store, and then they just put it on the guy, and it was basically showed that this is just a real man with a knife. He could be anyone. Just spooky. Everyone's a suspect, says Randy. But I think that you are right. I think it is partly because it is so saturated with this kind of horror comedy spoofing of itself, which in many ways it started that. But then that begs the question, if it can we really say it's like outdated if it made most of the things we now consider the norm nowadays?
True, like Cabin in the
true.
Woods, like heavily inspired meta stuff.
Yeah, but I what I meant was more like the way it presents itself is very much like a 90s movie. With the way it uses lightning, the way the dialogue's written, the even like the acting, it all feels very 90s to me, at least.
Yeah.
While others could have been, I could have seen it being made in the 40s. I could have seen it made today. I feel like it has a timeless kind of feel.
I agree with you in a way, but I think it's that Scream's kind of, what's the word? It was made for the time, It was made for the 90s, and it's obviously kind of was based around the trends of the 90s. So I think the others, the good thing about it is it's more standalone. It's not really trying to be a commentary of something at the time. It's just it. One thing I will say though is that, God, I talk too much. One thing I will say though is that if you didn't like Scream, it might actually be worth watching Scream 4, because Scream 4 was made in like 2010. Like 10 years after Screams 1, 2, and 3, and kind of commentates on how things have changed in the horror genre, It talks about, how the killer has to be updated to be scary, the nature of, like, how everything gets rebooted nowadays. It's a very interesting idea. I think the twist also works much better in Scream 4 than it did Scream 1. Like I said, I haven't watched it in ages, but I just remember it was a bit more chilling towards the end than the first Scream was, which was kind of like, this is just a load of fun.
Like
it's
when
still fun, but
it is. But like when I was watching Scream 1, it was a bit like, really, that's the twist. I couldn't believe it for a second there. I thought it was like there was a bigger twist for some reason. It all seemed too simple somehow, I guess.
I remember you telling me halfway through the film, you're like, is the killer, like, you kind of figured it out.
I did that, true.
Yeah, like I said, I wish we could really just talk about the twist, because the thing is, it sort of outdoes itself when, we have one guy, and he's just, he acts like he's a goddamn psycho having Sydney's boyfriend, Bill, I think his name is, and he's just like, hey, Sydney, why won't you have sex with me,
That
Sydney?
is basically the whole film. Like,
why don't you do it with me, Sydney? I'm just like, all right, so you're not suspicious at all. And in the end, they do play with it. Fair enough. But at the same time, it just feels
too
we have been a
obvious.
bit more subtle with this?
It just felt a bit too obvious, too on the face. But maybe that's also their intention. Maybe it's like-
Exactly.
maybe it is trying to say like, oh, in these slasher movies with human beings doing all the killing, it always is very clear what's going on. It always is very clear who is the murderer.
Yep.
It could be some sort of commentary, I guess.
I guess one thing can be said of that the others and Scream, they both have these twists, and I guess to a certain extent both of them sort of switched things up when it came to their genres. I know the others at the time was pretty influential as a kind of ghost movie, you know, mostly with the twist. But, you know, this idea of let's just take our time, not just kind of have all the paranormal things happen at once. So I guess both of them did sort of play with that idea of what to expect from their genres.
In the end, though, it's both films are very interesting, I guess. But for me, especially as someone who doesn't like horror movies, I'm not a horror movie person, I wouldn't really recommend Scream if you're looking for a horror movie, because it's not. It's really not. It's like a comedy film, actually. And it is a decent comedy film, I guess. In some ways, it's an enjoyable film. Sorry?
It is, yeah, like the killer sometimes the way he falls over reminds me like Abbott and Costello or something. Just so comical.
Abbott and Costello meet the ghost face guy.
We have this term in Mexico that we say película palomera, which is a movie you just watch to eat popcorn.
Popcorn flicks.
Yeah, like popcorn flicks. So I would say that Scream is a popcorn flicks, and that's it. Like, you have a great time, especially if you watch it with friends. You probably enjoy it a lot more. But I would strongly recommend watching the others because it's just such an amazing movie, and it has you like you just like. When you're looking at it, you just feel so drawn into the characters, into the plot, into the mystery, and you just want to know more. So it's really enjoyable. And obviously, we're not gonna say what happens in the end, but the plot twist, it's such an amazing plot twist, and it's so well made, and the way it's delivered, it's just amazing.
Yeah, it
and
leaves a very lasting impact. Like, you will stay thinking about that final twist for a while, I guess.
I could rewatch the others.
It's the kind of movie that ends and you're just left with this feeling of, oh my god, I love movies so much.
Yeah, I feel like to watch Scream, I would have to be very, very drunk to watch it again. But I love the others. Just cinematography by itself. I could watch it completely muted and just watch it for like the visuals. And the shadows.
True.
But I love it. I love it.
I guess I'd say, as you can see, I'm a bit more lenient on it, maybe because I did watch it much younger, but I guess for me, I can appreciate what Scream did. I appreciate the impact it had. I appreciate that a lot of films that were influenced by it, like, you know, Scream's original project name was Scary Movie, and that's why the first Scary Movie is a parody of Screams, which in of itself is a parody. Parodyception. As for the others, it's a good film. It's probably one of my favorite haunted house films. I greatly enjoyed the twist. I mean, I watched that one pretty young as well, just because they actually showed it in my class in like year 7 or 8. We were researching twists in English, and it had a good twist, so they just showed it to everyone in class.
That's how I was traumatized.
Everyone had nightmares.
Yeah, that's how traumatized a group of kids.
Freaking old lady, I swear. But no, the other is great. The acting's good. I highly recommend it if you're into things like, say, The Conjuring. Maybe not. Yeah, The Conjuring, Insidious. What was the things like that? I suppose. There was another one I was thinking, but I can't. Oh yeah, Oculus. You know, those kind of films.
Yeah. In defense of Scream, if they were to do a spin-off of just Dewey's life...
It is a TV show now.
Oh, yeah, it is a TV
and
show.
I've heard apparently the TV show is even more cliched and teen drama than the original film.
How is that even possible?
I don't know, maybe it's because now that one was 90s stuff, so we can kind of just say it as see it as, oh, those cheesy 90s, and this one is
true.
millennial high school drama stuff.
Going back to what happened to you, like that it was shown on your school, like in my school, they decided that showing the Unfriended movie would be a great way of showing people not to bully others.
I thought that, isn't that film supposed to be garbage anyway?
It's so gory, and they played it in my school to show us how bullying is wrong. I mean, honestly.
So if you get cyberbullied, the ghost is gonna come back for your
basically.
Facebook and kill you.
That's what they were trying to make us believe.
They're gonna turn your body into Ken Salsa. There's a scene in, I don't care if I'm spoiling. There's a scene in Unfriended, because for whatever reason I'm talking about, but where this is gonna sound mean, but it's pretty much his only defining trait. The fat character, he takes his blender,
oh my God, yes,
and he shoves his arm in his blender, and that's how he dies. And it's just like,
now imagine,
okay,
just cause,
like just imagine.
And the thing is, and it's so weird because like the entire film is shot in front of a computer, like it's on a computer screen. And so when this guy kills himself, he doesn't just do it. He needs to take the blender, put it in front of his monitor in an angle where you can see the hand, and then place it in. And of course, you can tell it's all edited, right?
Yeah.
You can tell that most of these people are probably just reading the lines as they go because it's on their...
Now imagine an auditorium filled of teenagers watching that in a school. It was awful. Like everybody screamed, and I was like, why the hell is my school playing this to me? Honestly, what the hell?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that they could... I went to school in Malaysia. I don't think that they could get away with that over here.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. But...
Yeah, I don't know what happened there, to be honest.
Who knows?
Anyway, Unfriended, not a movie I would recommend watching.
Okay,
But The Others is definitely a movie I would recommend watching. And if you want to have a laugh and have a great time and get drunk, you should watch Scream too.
If you want to see if you're into... Actually, I would say if you're into horror and you just want to see kind of how different trends in horror set, Scream's a good one to kind of see where all these horror comedy spoofs came from. To see kind of, it's sort of like the culmination of the slasher genre came right out of the end of that period as kind of a, look how ridiculous this is now sort of film.
Yeah.
It was so juxtaposed with all the other serial killer films at the time. 1991, Silence of the Lambs. Then like recently after Slaughter of the Innocents, Seven, Copycat. And then you have Scream.
And I never really considered Silence of the Lambs or Seven to be slasher movies. I just thought they were just outright thrillers. Kind of like serial killers. Movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they both deal with serial killers, but in a more
very
thriller.
Way,
in a more like thriller way, in the even more noir ways in some ways, I guess.
But I mean, like Scream is like proper juxtapose of like things like Friday the 13th. Halloween and by that point almost every killer in those films was just an outright like
supernatural
immortal zombie whatever. And here's the Scream guy, he trips over things. He talks on the phone
with that voice, that creepy ass voice.
I want to get that machine. Like it would be amazing just to prank people using that.
Like reach the answering machine, you just hit hello, Sydney.
So anyway, I guess this is it.
I think this is a good way, a good point to end.
Yes.
Where it's all going now.
Yeah. We'll probably be on next week, or well, hopefully we will. I don't know, but
or maybe the week after that, because reading week.
Reading week.
But thank you for listening. I hope you found this informative and all that junk. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you for listening.
See you next week.
Not see you, because we can't see them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Till next week.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Closeup Film Podcast with me, Luisa, Eduardo, Anirudh, and Alex, produced by Danny Brown. Music by Dirty Art Club. Follow us on Twitter @closeup_crew. You can find all of our episodes in the Express Radio Mixcloud.